according to Luke. Jesus said to the disciples, I have come to light a fire on the earth, and how I wish the blaze were ignited already. There is a baptism I must still receive, and how great is my distress until it is accomplished. Do you think that I have come to bring peace on earth? I tell you the opposite is true. I have come to bring division. From now on, a household of 5 will be divided, 3 against 2, and 2 against 3. Father against son, and son against father, mother against daughter, and daughter against mother, mother-in-law against daughter-in-law, and daughter-in-law against mother-in-law. My friends, the gospel of the Lord. I titled my homily, I don't usually title it, but I titled this one, You Can't Play with Fire and Not Get Burned. Okay? Most of us know that is true. Jesus said in the gospel, I have come to set a fire on the earth, and how I wish it were already blazing. This particular gospel can actually be a little bit disconcerting at times. I mean, no one among us likes to think about divisions, right? We just generally don't. As a society, we don't. As people, we don't. We don't like to think about divisions, and we don't definitely like to talk about them very much, except unless you're running for office, I'll shut up. We don't tend to like conflict very much in our lives, right? We don't like to like conflict in our world. We don't. That's not something that. And now, when you hear the gospel, you go, "Ooh, Jesus saying this? I gotta wrap my mind around it." We have long upheld in the Christian tradition the ideal of peace, right? Even you think of Jesus' birth, night of silence, right? And, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, and peaceful nights, all that kind of stuff. But have you ever really thought deeply about peace? Have you ever really thought deeply about peace? I'm not talking serenity, I'm talking peace. If you really think about peace deeply, you'll see that it's really the birth child of conflict, right? The only way we ever get to peace is going through conflict. We have to live through the conflict in order to achieve the peace. And as you tear up the gospel really closely, you'll see that Jesus doesn't say he will cause division, but rather his ministry of spreading the good news. That is what in the end will cause division. If you remember the other pieces of Scripture, perfect love casts out all fear. Fear in our lives thrives in conflict, doesn't it? Put yourselves in conflict and you'll find fear. It thrives in our lives. And those two things have no place at home in peace. Right? Fear and conflict don't have a home in peace. What I believe Jesus was doing, or was pointing to, was the fact that love will actually cause division. Love actually causes division in many cases in our lives. If you act in a loving way, I was watching a show last night. I forget what's the name. What was the name of the show, Ken? You don't even remember, you weren't there. It was a show. It was kind of like, you're on candid camera kind of thing. They set up this young girl, supposedly being picked up by this guy in a coffee shop, and they surprised the people because the girl was an actor and the guy was an actor. But every time, people who absolutely did not know this young girl, they kept telling her, "No, you don't go home with him." He was trying to take her home and play in his studio or whatever, and hot tub, and he was doing a good job acting, but. He was trying to seduce her, a 15-year-old girl who had skipped school. That's the role she was playing. In that, all these strangers were saying, "Oh no, you don't go home with him." And even he came back several times, picked up her guitar, because that was her cue. She was going to go home and play music. That she was going to be a rock star, and he was going to help her be a rock star. The people actually physically got up and went over and took the guitar from him, took it out of his hands, and he would say, mind your own business. And these total, complete strangers would say things like, I am minding my own business, and she's not going home with you. You know? And it was young people and old people, and they did it about 4 different times, you know? So it really, I just dropped my mic. It was really a phenomenal show, but every time people stood up and stepped into it, they stepped into it in love. And love caused conflict. But love won out in the end. Love always wins out in the end. But love itself will cause conflict. And I think that's what Jesus is saying about families, about splitting 2 and 3 and mother against father and father against. Not that they'll hate each other, but the fact is that when we live our lives in love and speak from it and stand in it, we're going to cause conflict because somebody's going to say and try to disturb that peace in our lives. Somebody's going to try to ruin that because it's almost too comfortable, right? One of the things that we did when we started Spirit of Hope was a commitment. We made an absolute, utter, complete commitment to only speak in love, no matter what was said about us in the broader community. So really nasty things got said about us in print, on paper, on radio, all kinds of stuff. We never spoke not out of love. We always spoke in love. Said, sorry that you have to feel that way. Sorry that you... And that wins. It wins because that's what I believe is divinely inspired in our lives. I do firmly believe that you and I we simply cannot escape God's grace. It's just impossible to escape it. You can't get away from it. You can try to shrug it off. You can try to run away from it. You can try to deny it. And I always say that to my friends, denial is more than a river in Egypt. But we cannot escape God's amazing grace in our lives. It simply gets on us, and just like getting burned, it changes us forever. No matter what. No matter what. So you can try to deny God's love. You can try to deny the fact that God's changing your lives, my life and yours, but the fact is that God is. Every time we gather, every time we pray, every time we take our issues and our wants and our needs and our desires, all our health concerns, everything, every time we do that, we begin to change the world. Let me share a little bit more, but maybe give it a little bit more example. Tuesday night, you know what happened Tuesday night, right? Terrible rainstorm. Am I right? I'm sitting on my back step. I got the weirdest place to do my prayer meditation. It's on the back step of my back porch, right outside of my back porch. It's like the absolutely, utterly most uncomfortable place in God's world to pray, and there's where I get my inspiration. I don't know why, but I was sitting on the step, reading the gospel, reflecting on this rain came pouring down, right? It was sheets and sheets, and I mean, it was. And I looked out, and I looked up, and I have a shop above my garage, and it has a lot of tools in it. Some rather expensive electrical tools. And I looked up, and the door was open. The only thing that was there was a screen door that was, I even wrote it really beautifully. I said it was futilely trying to resist the rain. I knew I had to go out to do something, right? I knew I had to go out and shut the door. So next to the hot tub, which I'm sitting next to, there's a massive, right, one of those massive beach towels, and I think, okay, I got this. I got my sandals on, I just pop my sandals off, I take this massive beach towel, I wrap it over my head, wrap it around my body. I mean, I literally covered every inch. It's a big towel. I literally covered every inch of my body, and I thought, not a problem. I can get this. I can get out the door, get out down the sidewalk, up the step, shut the door, get down, and come back in and got made. So, off I do. I wrap myself totally up. I'm good. And I had just gotten my pajamas on the bed, so it was all nice and clean and dry. It was perfect, right? I head down the sidewalk, and I get up the steps, and I close the door, and I head back and I come back down the sidewalk, and it is literally, sheets of this stuff are coming down. Right? This is one of the worst rainstorms I've ever seen in my life. I get back out to the back porch, and I think, and I take the towel off, and I am soaked from head to foot. I literally am soaked from head to foot. Every square inch of my body, everything I was wearing was absolutely, utterly soaked.
And I sat down on the step and I picked up the gospel and I said, this is what it's talking about. You and I cannot, no matter what we do, we try to wrap ourselves in cloaks of fear or arrogance or even, ego-sting towels. We can try to wrap ourselves away from God's grace, and we can try to prevent God from getting into our lives, and the only thing God will do is laugh. And the torrents of rain will come pouring down, and you and I will both realize that no matter what, we simply can't escape God's grace. You just can't. The fire's begun, and we can't ever be the same. No matter what, anytime we put ourselves in relationship with Christ, our lives will be different. When we started Spirit of Hope, one of our goals was to be an instrument of God's grace for the world. We say it before Mass. Gary said it this evening. Every time we start Mass, we have one primary purpose to share the good news of God's unending grace and love in this world. One of the deepest and most affirming confirmations that I believe that we're doing something right comes at the end of Mass when I hear folks say as they walk out the door, wow, I've got a lot to think about. Or, man, I love coming here because I feel inspired when I walk out these doors. We don't say that, my friends, because some great storyteller was up here, or some great song was played, or some great thing happened in the midst of the liturgy. I believe we say that because in the context of this prayer, in the context of our prayer, the divine spark that resides inside each and every one of us has been coaxed into a little flame. That little spark has been coaxed into a flame, and all of a sudden, you and I begin to realize that we can't escape God's love and God's grace, and it's going to change who we are. If the rain on Tuesday night taught me anything, it taught me this, that nothing I do, nothing you do, nothing that any of us does can ever stop us from the flames of God's grace and love in our lives. Cover up, run away, nothing. Absolutely nothing. No sickness, no disease, no broken relationship, no fractured femur or wounded heart. God will find a way. We just need to keep walking, keep praying, and keep hoping. And keep believing that somehow you and I might be given the insight as to how God is in the midst of this whole mess we call life. And then when we see it, when we see that instrument of God in our lives, or that change of God in our lives, our charge is to share it with somebody else. So the next time someone comes to you in their fear and their hurt and their pain, I hope we can all give them a big old beach towel, invite them to go out and walk in the rain and see what happens. Because I can tell you this from experience, God's grace will wash them clean. Do you have a towel that you're willing to share?